Listening, fill in the blanks.
Let's start.
In the past few years, the trend has been away from hybrid tea and floribunda roses towards shrub and species roses. While this change has, in part, been driven by recent fashions in garden design, coupled with adroit marketing, there is no doubt that shrub and species roses offer a number of cultural advantages. Of course, there are aesthetic considerations too, some growers preferring the wide color range and high-centered blooms of the hybrid teas, while others choose shrub roses, because they integrate more easily into an overall garden design. This is largely a question of taste and lies beyond the scope of the present article.
As a result of this genetic diversity, shrub roses have two major cultural advantages for the horticulturalist and the amateur gardener: resistance to disease and tolerance of a wide variety of climate and soil types. Many shrub roses show resistance to fungal diseases such as black spot and rust, to which hybrid teas are highly susceptible. Rugosas are particularly disease-free. In poor soil conditions, shrub roses, having deep vigorous root systems, are more tolerant of drought and do not suffer to the same extent from nutrient deficiency diseases. For the horticulturalist, this means that less time and money need be spent on applying fertilizers or spraying for disease. Similarly, there are some shrub roses which will grow well in shady or windy conditions, or even against a north-facing wall. Large specimen shrubs may be found growing happily in the most unpromising situations.
The style and register of the translated text should, for reasons of integrity and coherence, mirror that of the original. It would be misleading if the translator of a text written in a discursive and amusing style were to render it ponderous in translation, just as it would be wrong for a translator to oversimplify what was originally an erudite piece of prose. However, this is not to ignore the fact that there might well be instances in which a text, awkwardly written in the original, could be made more accessible by the translator. It is a question of judgment.
Our natural reflex mechanisms for balance and posture are largely dependent on the coordination of the head, neck and back. The technique addresses the causes of misuse and lack of poise that may be interfering with this relationship. When these mechanisms are allowed to work in harmony, good use spontaneously returns, resulting in easier breathing, freer, lighter movement, and a greater ability to control our reactions and our movements. In other words, the technique enables us to use ourselves better, and, in that sense, is concerned with helping anybody, the so-called able-bodied, as well as disabled people to overcome their disabilities. Hence, the Alexander teacher's approach when working with the disabled is, in essence, the same as with any pupil of the technique. There are, of course, several factors which have to be taken into consideration when working with disabled pupils. They may suffer intense pain and discomfort, loss of kinesthetic awareness, sometimes with total loss of sensitivity in parts of the body, severe lack of coordination, loss of mobility, memory loss, blindness, deafness, and speech impairment. The effect this has on the person's emotional and psychological state also has to be taken into account. Some disabled pupils may need longer lessons, because of the time required to move them from the wheelchair, take off casts, slings and other movement aids, etc. Others may only be able to concentrate for short periods of time, and therefore, require shorter lessons more frequently. It often requires a certain amount of inventiveness on the part of the Alexander teacher, both as far as practical arrangements and the approach to teaching are concerned, a challenge that, in most cases, is greatly rewarded by the positive results.
Perturbations of nebulous interstellar clouds in space result in gravitational interaction, with the consequent contraction of gaseous matter to create protostars, which are much larger than the stars they will finally become. As the temperature increases, the gas becomes completely ionized to form plasma, and gravitational contraction of the core then takes place. The onset of hydrogen burning happens at a core temperature of several million degrees, and converts hydrogen to helium through nuclear fusion. The greater part of a star's evolutionary lifetime is spent hydrogen burning and, during this period, it is said to be on the main sequence. The end of hydrogen burning is marked by the evolution of a star into a red giant, when it is said to leave the main sequence. Burning ceases completely in the core, which undergoes gravitational contraction to maintain mechanical equilibrium.
The most massive stars have completed burning to obtain an iron core, and have a main sequence mass exceeding 20 solar masses. This is so great that degenerate neutron pressure cannot support it, and rapid collapse ensues. Since density is inversely proportional to volume and the mass is vast, then, as the volume dwindles, the density tends to infinity and a black hole is formed. Black holes are a violation of Pauli's exclusion principle. If the principle did not regulate the evolution of stars, nothing would prevent the inexorable collapse of an interstellar cloud from its initial disturbance into a massive black hole.
Angkor Wat is simply unique, a stunning blend of spirituality and symmetry, an enduring example of man's devotion to his gods. Relish the very first approach, as that spine-tickling moment when you emerge on the inner causeway will rarely be felt again. It is the largest and undoubtedly the most breathtaking of the monuments at Angkor, and is widely believed to be the largest religious structure in the world. It is also the best preserved temple at Angkor, as it was never abandoned to the elements, and repeat visits are rewarded with previously unnoticed details. It was probably built as a funerary temple for Suryavarman II to honor Vishnu, the Hindu deity with whom the king identified.
There is a growing body of evidence that suggests that standards for beauty are ingrained in our DNA. While adults have had a lifetime of exposure to what society and the media defines as beautiful and attractive, babies have not. Yet, studies on infants by R.J. Edler, as well as Gillian Rhodes, showed that infants as young as 3 months of age are able to discriminate between faces thought to be attractive and unattractive, as defined by a panel of adult judges. The infants preferred looking at the attractive faces, and would also spend a longer amount of time looking at the attractive versus the unattractive faces. Adults also tend to look longer at faces judged to be attractive, rather than those deemed unattractive.
Like, share, subscribe the channel, and press the bell icon for further updates.